Welcome back to the Pennsylvania Railroad Middle Division. Today we're going to be installing a speedometer on our track for the purposes of speed matching our locomotives. Today's only going to cover the installation. We're going to cover the speed matching in a later episode. The speedometer that we're going to be installing is called the TrainSpeed 1 from TCS, which is Train Control Systems. This sets up one speedometer on a given track. They also offer a 4-track version, but we're only going to use the one. So let's see what's inside the package. All right, we've got a manual. Ribbon cable, mounting hardware, and a drilling template. And the board itself, much smaller than I was expecting. That's nice. All right, let's take a look at that. So we've got a circuit board with an LED readout that'll show through the fascia. And I notice here the ribbon cable has 2 sensors here that will be mounted from underneath the track. So let's go find a place to put this. I need a long straight stretch of track for the speedometer, and I've got 2 potential locations. I've decided I want to have it on the lower level so that I can be seated while I'm doing speed matching. Here's a straight stretch in front of the Lewistown station next to the yard. That would work. And then right around the corner here, when you've got this straight stretch here along Roundhouse Road, and I'm going to opt for this area here because it's right by where my DCC system is and my test or my programming track. So I think that's the place to go. And I'm also thinking I'll do it on one of the back tracks because I've got a curtain rod underneath here for holding up skirting below the fascia, and then I've got a 2x4 that runs parallel. So I'm thinking, maybe track 2 or track 3. Okay, looking at the documentation, I need to drill 2 holes through the track to place these sensors, and they're very tiny sensors. They're on a ribbon cable, and I can rip this down here and extend it so that they can be spaced farther apart. The manual tells you, and it's really logical, that the farther apart the 2 sensors are, the more accurate your speed reading is going to be. By default, they recommend 1/100th of a mile, which in HO scale is 7.283 inches. They also give a table for centimeters if that's the preference. But the margin of error gets reduced the wider you have your sensors. And they give the example in N scale. For 1/100th of a mile, you should be using 3.96 inches. But if you actually round it to 4, it's only a 1% error rate. So for HO, I'm going to go with the 1/100th, which is 7.283 inches, roughly 7 1/4. They give you some more information about sensor placement, the drill bit size, and then over here they talk about jumpers. There's jumpers on the board right here, and the table tells you how those jumpers need to be set. And interestingly, it says it's set the default at 1 to 100, which requires jumpers 1 and 3 to be removed and 2 to be engaged. And that's not the case here. So it's not set up per default like it said it would be. So I need to change jumper number 2 here. There, that should be good to go. And they show you how the jumper needs to be installed. And coming back to the board here, there is a power connector here, and it needs at least 6 volts. It can handle up to 18 volts AC or DC. Almost everybody has an accessory bus on their layout. You can just tap into that, and the polarity does not matter if it's DC. And the sensor connector is here. That's where the ribbon cable is going to go in. And then they show you when you turn it on, you should initially get this op1 code for a few moments. And the 1 is actually an indicator of how the jumpers are set. And then you'll get this SN1 if the detectors are, or the sensors are detected appropriately. But then they go through quite a few, different errors that you might get and what that is. But if everything's working, you get that SN1, and you wait a few moments and the screen will go blank, you can then roll a piece of rolling stock or run a locomotive across it, and you would have the speed shown there. Okay, so I've selected an appropriate location on the track. I'm going to go with track 3 right here, and I've checked underneath to make sure that I'm missing the bracing of the framework. So I'm going to go ahead and put my first hole through. All right, and the second hole should be 7.283 inches from the first. So I'm talking roughly 7 1/4. Now I'm starting at the 1 inch mark. So I'm actually going out here to 8 1/4. And wouldn't you know it, that lands right on a tie. Gotta love it. All right. And that did slide a little long, so it's going to be off a little bit. And now we take our sensors, and I have ripped them apart a little bit to allow for the spread. We need to feed it up from underneath the layout. Okay, I've got both sensors through. Now I'm going to go get my vacuum cleaner. It's very important that this all be clean. You can see where the sensor is there. And over here. I'm going to take some duct tape and I'm going to tape the cable underneath to hold it in place for the most part. All right, perfect. Now I'm going to be dealing with the other end of the cable and the actual board. Alright, I'm going to want to test this before I cut it into the fascia, so I'm bringing the board out here. And I've got my ribbon cable here. And I've got some accessory power from underneath the layout. Again, the polarity doesn't matter. Here's my ribbon cable. Got that all installed, so let's see what we get. Need a little slack here, so it's there. I've got my SN1 showing, which is correct. I ran my finger over it, made the light go out. Let's just take a piece of rolling stock here. $13.7. 64. 7.4. 42.6. Looks like we're in business, folks. So now I can proceed with the fascia installation. Okay, so I taped the drilling and cutting template to my fascia, and I used the drill bit to kind of make an edge around where the cutout for the display goes. Then I used a razor knife to actually cut it open, and then I filed it out until the display would fit in there. So now I can go behind and push that through. So now I'm ready to drill the holes for the screws that'll hold it in place. All right, I've drilled my holes. Now I can remove the tape. All right, one thing that I found is that the screws that came with the speedometer that should go through the fascia and then through the board itself, and then have a nut on the back. They're not long enough, so I'm going to have to acquire some longer ones. So for now, I'm going to have to leave this just like this. Well, that's a wrap for today. We've got the speedometer installed. Watch for a future episode when we actually get into speed matching using the speedometer in conjunction with JMRI.